So there's a number that's always thrown out there, right? 80% of ERP projects fail. No one's ever come up with the explanation to that. It's like discussion we had last night. How did you come up with that number? No one knows what that number is or where it came from, but it feels like 80% of projects fail when it comes to ERP. And in my experience, it's mostly because we haven't done the thinking through or the building of the use case for why we need a new ERP system or why we need to modernize or change things. It's like building a house. When you go to a contractor, you don't say how much for a house. Right. That's what our clients are doing. Right. They're going to a software vendor and saying, how much for your system? Send us a bid and we'll push it through and contract with you, without having built the architectural drawings or the processes and requirements that really need to go into not just the selection, but also as a contract compliance tool. Because if the vendor has lied to you about their capabilities, you need to have a way to go back and say, hey, look, you said so-and-so in your proposal, you said yes to all these requirements, and now you're saying you can't do that. We've successfully used those as contract compliance tools in the past. But what's your experience?
Well, I agree with everything you just said, first of all. I mean, I think that I take your analogy one step further and say, not only would you not just reach out to the contractor to get a cost on a house, but you also wouldn't reach out to, say, the plumber and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Plumber, I want a house with running water. So how much is it going to cost to get the house? And that's what we end up doing a lot of times as organizations. We reach out to the plumbers, which are the software vendors, the system integrators, and we expect the plumbers to build us a house that has running water. And so that's the really key there is to recognize that you're not plumbing. That's part of a project, but you're building a house, and there's a whole foundation. And like you said, the blueprint and the vision of who you want to be when you grow up, all that stuff has to be defined up front. And software vendors will counter that and say, no, you don't have to do that. Just use our software, and that's going to tell you how to run the business. And that's dangerous because, first of all, they don't know your business. Second of all, their software is not always going to be the best for what you need, and you're going to have to make changes or perhaps use a third-party add-on or whatever the case may be. And you want to know that you have that vision that directs those sorts of decisions. So totally agree with what you said, though.
Well, and also the definition of failure, right? It's closely tied to the definition of going live with the software.
Right.
The vendor will tell you can go live in 6 months. That's the the common number being thrown out.
Right.
In 6 months, you'll go live, and the clients are, wow, I can't believe you can do this in 6 months. Let's sign.
Right.
But the definition of going live needs to be agreed upon, right? To the vendor, it's we've deployed your system, your name's on it, and sign here and you're live.
Right.
But to a client, it needs to be, can I run checks? Can I run my HRIS? Can I track my inventory? It's a lot deeper than just saying you're now live on a certain platform.
Right, and one step further is not only can I run payroll, can I run my business processes, but am I doing it better than I was before I implemented the software? And that's the tricky part, or that's where vendors don't have a lot of accountability. Is they're saying we gave you new technology, but they don't necessarily care, or nor are they compensated for ensuring that they've improved your business or your organization. So I think that's a big important point, though, is how do you define success and how do you define failure? I think that's why that number you mentioned, the 80%. Is so uncertain, or it's so qualitative in some ways, because it just depends on how you define success. If your definition of success, we went live, then I'd say 80% probably succeed, because most of them do go live. It's just, what does it look like?
Whose definition is it?
Yeah, exactly.
And going back to the why projects fail, also it's difficult to label why things happen, right? If you ask a client that's struggling through an implementation that's going on for many years, the common thing to say, well, we haven't been trained. I don't know how to use this thing.
Right.
And especially if a project has gone on for 2+ years, you've forgotten what you did in year one.
Right.
And you can't just flip the switch and start using a new system, because it's also very risky. In our case, it's people's taxes not getting recorded correctly, or missing inventory from utility systems. It's things that are not quite high impact like what your manufacturing client might have, but it's still not letting our government clients fulfill their mission. So it's very strategic and high impact in either way.
Absolutely, yeah, and you want to make sure that you're not only are you not undermining your vision and your mission as an organization, but ultimately you want to be advancing it and furthering it. And I think so many organizations have set the bar low of for digital transformation just to say our goal is to not screw this up and to not fail.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot different than, that bar is a lot different than we actually want to make the organization better and more efficient and provide better service to our customers, our stakeholders, our constituents.
Right.
All that stuff is, in my opinion, how organizations should be defining success.
So in your clientele in the private sector, what's the motivation? Is it mostly to become better, or is it that something's critically failing and we need to find a replacement?
Well, that's a great question. I think I'd be curious to hear what your view of the public sector is, because in the private sector, what we're seeing is that in the past, up until say maybe 5 years ago, the focus was on let's make our business better. Let's strategically deploy technology. Organizations were never really good at it. They were still failing at a very high rate, but they at least had the right intentions and there was a right driver behind the why they're doing this. Now, what's happening in the industry, which I think is very unhealthy and risky, and I think that's why we'll see increasing failures in the near future, is because now you have software vendors who are either acquiring other companies and or decommissioning their old on-premise systems and essentially forcing customers into cloud migrations. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to debate whether or not cloud's right or wrong, or whether you should or shouldn't be in the cloud, although we could have a whole separate conversation about that. But the point is it's the wrong reason. Now organizations are going in with the wrong reason for transformation. It's because they have to.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the worst reason to do it, even though it's necessary. If you have to do it, you have to do it. Yeah. But if that's your sole reason and you haven't built on top of that what you want to look like at the other end of it, then that's a really dangerous spot to be in.
Well, especially if it's driven by a vendor that has an artificial deadline on when they might sunset your existing product.
Right.
And we have clients that are being backed into a corner because, again, vendors are saying, we just bought this other product and it's nothing but a sticker change. We're going to transition you over to the new system and sign here. And then when kickoff comes around for implementation, the whole methodology is for a new implementation that our clients didn't sign up for. Right. All because I don't want to say fell for it, because it is a real deadline. They will pull the plug and kill the old product. Right. But the way that they're going about putting our clients in a corner is not acceptable.
I totally agree. And what they're doing is they're putting their financial and business interests first, which we all do it, right? You and I are business owners too. We have to make decisions that are best for our organization. But software vendors are doing this at such a scale that's affecting hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of organizations throughout the world. And in most cases, I'd argue, they're putting those organizations at risk because they're pursuing their own self-interest. And that's a problem. I don't know how you fix it. We're all out watching out for ourselves. So we're not going to change human behavior, but it's a really unhealthy, risky spot to be in my opinion.
It really is. And I think that's where our value comes in is we really are advocates for the client. Like, one of our core values is caring deeply and passionately for our clients' well-being, not just the projects.
Right.
And it bothers me when the vendor is nowhere close to having that kind of value.
Right.
And I think that's what our clients need, and sounds like yours do too.
Yeah, our companies are very similar in that purpose and vision and mission that we're trying to accomplish.